Does Dasein wear the features of the ultimate and unoutstrippable ground? Um, on the one side, there is a look of always searching historically for a ground of grounds. Um, this ground was seen to be the human reason, or whatever faculty should go along with mathematikos with the Greeks, which may not be nous but may be episteme, because the Socratic, Platonic, Aristotelian discussion on the distinction between episteme and nous as the two compartments of the higher part of the soul, in contradistinction to things seen in reflection and things seen directly with the senses, which are the two parts of the lower part of the soul, is not completely clarified by any of the ancients. Roughly, knowledge which is meant to be verified and to be certain is knowledge such as the Pythagorean theorem, and then on the higher level, the nous is supposed to give us knowledge of ideas, where ideas mostly means things like justice, beauty, or piety, rather than things like hair, stone, or horse-drawn carriages. This ground, then, in ordinary conception of historical development, which, however, itself is an historical development, such that one gets the idea that time yields, in an essential way, gains in our vision of what the ultimate ground is, rather than that maybe some accidents of the weather, or of where people have founded their city, of the material outlay of the person, that we get a body that is Socrates gives us a better result than if we get a body which is somehow disfigured, or a lean, hungry type like Shakespeare speaks of, which would give us a different and defective result. But rather, it's seen that through the historical process, it suggests that itself, over time, we get into a better position to see the truth. And then in the light of that idea, we could think that we built up to Descartes, and Descartes' assertion that in two different ways their certainty is to be found: in the extension with respect to the outer world, and in so-called cognition with respect to the inner world. So we already have a history of notions of the ground of grounds. Also in Immanuel Kant, we get this continuation of the Cartesian view through the question of the raised by Hume, where Kant again appeals to the core of the human being with his transcendental concept, which he analogizes on the simple inner certainty we see in the Meno, in the servant or slave boy in the Meno, discerning a simple geometric proof. Is Dasein then to be seen in the horizon of this search for a ground of grounds, where ultimately when Heidegger speaks of the truth of being, he speaks of the ground of grounds. Dasein, given in the straightforward sense, means or directs us towards the claim that there is no thing to predicate the predications on. That if I say tree, this is not something already there to which I apply qualities, but it's a question. So there's a question, it's a radical question. The adjective radical, rootless, being itself insufficient, but the thought being not obviously inherently implausible, because one can think the thing. The thought is rather like the thought of infinity, insofar as it's extremely simple, but it's a ground where one can't quite say what one is thinking or whether it makes sense. One can merely say 1, 2, 3, 1 million and 1 million and 2, and it goes on. And there's a primary vagueness in that. We know what we mean in some sense. If we can apply it in some sense, we could say if you start walking this way, if you take a rocket, shoot it this way, if you send a satellite with some messages in it this way, it ought to keep going. Maybe there's some features of the physical universe which prevent that at some point. That could be because space is radically curved. There's a strange loop. That could be for other reasons, but we can see that the pure concept of space would only say these would be barriers. So even if the physicist's concept of space said that at a certain point you swirl around and come back, if you go in that direction, you'll actually end up back where you started for some reason. Nonetheless, we can see in the unalloyed thought of infinity, that's just an accidental barrier to continuously going in that direction. Then you can challenge in a more refined and subtle way what it means to go in a direction by saying what the question that was brought up in Heidegger's time about the parallel postulate, whether there actually exists parallel lines, which means at the same time whether there actually exists